Hi, everybody. It's Susan, and here we're going to talk about the Leo full moon that's coming up in about a week from when you hear this. If you are living Eastern Europe or further east, it will be on the 2nd of February, but Universal Time and further west, it will be the 1st of February. That's Sunday, and that is at 10:09 p.m. or 22:09 in the Universal Time Zone, which is basically London and what we used to call Greenwich Mean Time. So that's why it's listed as Greenwich, which is now fully absorbed into London. What we're going to look at is this full moon in the context of the bigger changes, and then, of course, how you can examine that yourself through your own lens and your own life and how you're coping. And I do hope you're coping. Just before we begin, I want to mention that you can still get the 2026 readings. I have the whole year's aspects. Almost every major aspect that you can think of is covered in that. And so if you want to know in advance how everything is coming up from all the different months coming up ahead with all the very, very exciting, I will say exciting, let's say rare and exciting events that are coming up this year, you will already get a heads up if you get that, and that you can get at the links below this video. And also you'll find more information below this video about the courses I'm doing starting in March. I'm doing live, no pre-recorded sessions, live sessions on beginners astrology, so really the introduction to astrology, and then intermediate astrology, which is geared for people who already have a good basis in astrology and want to improve their chart reading skills, and especially with reference to individuals' natal charts. But it will apply in all charts. Um, right, so there we are. That's the business side of things. Oh, maybe one more thing is that I won't be available. So if you are emailing me, I will not be able to answer you before the 8th of February. So from the 28th of January till the 8th of February, or even, yeah, 8th, 9th of February, I won't be able to get back to you. So just be patient. Know that I will get back to it as soon as I can. And I think that's that. So let's have a look at this Leo full moon. It's happening in the context of course, the bigger series of conjunctions that we've had through January, which were initially in January. The beginning, first half was all about the Capricorn conjunctions, and then the party moved to Aquarius, and everybody started hanging out together with Pluto in Aquarius. And now all of those, by the time of this full moon on the 1st, all of those conjunctions will be separating or finished completely. So Mars is still technically in the zone of conjunction with Pluto, even at this full moon. It will be just under 4 degrees away from that. Actually, no, it's just over 3 degrees away. So it's very, very much in the conjunction zone. Here we have it in the 5th house. Don't worry about the houses here because this is a universal chart. I'm just using it to illustrate the point. But so we're still in this dynamic of the intensity of the Aquarius stellium. And I meant to mention this earlier, and I did touch on it in certain individual sign readings in previous videos, but I feel it's really important to speak to the notion of stelliums before we get into the full moon, because these are intense, let's say, intensifications of energy that we have to grapple with in the whole of the dynamic of the chart. So even though it's happening in one area, because of rulerships and because signs are ruled by, for example, planets like Mars and the Sun, rules Leo, for example. Venus, of course, rules Taurus and Libra. Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. And then, of course, Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Um, in modern astrology, Pluto also rules Scorpio, so that could even double up for some of you if you are working on that level. And so it's going to affect more than just this part of the chart. And it's really important to have that sense of how challenging it is to grapple with a stellium. I have one as a natal placement. Anyone who has a stellium in their chart, it is something that cannot be avoided. It forces this focus of attention that just everything drives through that stellium, and it can be really destabilizing when transits come through that. Now, this is a transit, so it's not necessarily the case for everyone, but I'm speaking to the theory of stelliums, which can be, or stellia, it can be problematic. And by the way, I'm not saying stallions, that's a horse, okay? So stelliums, stella is a star, right? In Latin, stella is a star. And a stellium is a collection of stars, usually minimum three. I really get more interested when there are four or more planets involved, especially if part of that story is involving slower or outer planets, which don't affect the individual in the same way as the faster moving planets. But there, we have a major stellium here, both in Capricorn early in January and now in Aquarius, lingering on. And why this matters is because we can feel how disruptive things are when there's a lot of intensity in one area of life. And you see that the big theme just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. And here the theme, as you've probably heard me in the last couple of videos, is very, very much about our place in the world, our place in society. And even because of Aquarius' focus on the future, it's our place in the future. What are we doing? And how are we going about what we want to see or how we want to feel as we go forward in time? Of course, there's on one level no time, but at the same time, we do function as if there's time. That's our social Aquarian way of interacting, or maybe that's more the Gemini way of interacting. What time is it? I have an appointment. That's very Gemini. But still, with the way that we interact with each other, we have to have a sense of a continuum going together in one or another direction. And I really feel this is something that requires a lot more attention than we can give it if we keep getting distracted by a billion and one different things that are happening all around us. So again, the invitation, as I've been repeating ad nauseum, is to really slow down and come inward. Sit with yourself. Leo represents the heart. Leo is the center of self. You know, in the Indian tradition, in the original way of looking at the mind, its center is the heart. So this is also why the moon, for example, represents both the mind and the emotional body. The emotions are in the domain of the mind. They don't exist outside of our awareness of them through the mind, that we can draw our attention into them. The moon also represents the actual body, so the body-mind complex, where we feel, we sense the emotions that we become aware of. And that lunar quality in Leo is really focused on the heart. What does my heart say? What does my heart tell me? And the opposite energy of Aquarius is very much about the mind and the intellect, and that's the practical, pragmatic mind. And we see a lot of this energy at the moment, especially surrounding AI, especially in the way that certain outcomes are justified. It's almost like this Machiavellian, quite almost Scorpionic, and the Scorpio Aquarius connection, which would be a great short form for Machiavellian, meaning that I do what I want because there's an end result that I want to accomplish. And we see this globally, almost disregard for other people's feelings, and that's the shadow aspect of Aquarius. We disregard the collective, we disregard, communities, we disregard what was once considered law, and we're now having to grapple with, well, how do I feel about that? How am I placed in this area of life? So this would be a really great full moon to recognize the sense of the culmination of this energy and how it's impacting you, how that is affecting you. So just to have that sense that this is a continuum of a story that we're all still working through, but it's also always going to come back to our individual place in the story. Now, Leo also represents leaders. It represents rulers, kings, leaders of all descriptions, as well as famous people. So stars, famous people in movies or whatever. So people of note, people even of notoriety, we could say, in the Leo area of life. And so there can also be some real reframing around an individual who is either famous or a leader or ruler of some sort, and their place in society, what's happening to them. And certainly there are a number of leaders who have very strong signatures around this configuration, and especially in early Aquarius. where they will be challenged either by square. I'm thinking in terms of King Charles, for example, of United Kingdom, and these kinds of tensions can create tensions around the quality of the individual on a physical or emotional level, but also on a rulership level. And of course, there are many, many others that go along with that. And I haven't had time to focus on the collective. And to be honest, this is my Leo Aquarius battle, which is an ongoing one, which is that I'm very, very much more focused and more interested in my spiritual progress and my way of contributing positively to the world than to the world itself. So it's this constant seesaw between feeling like there's a need or a helpful, perhaps, place in explaining things as we see them in the world around through astrology, and also wanting to get far away from that. So anybody who knows a bit about Vedic astrology, I work with some of that, especially more in my private readings, but I'm in my Ketu Mahadasha. I'm in the last 6 months of my Ketu. I guess I have to say 7 months probably. I'm trying to shorten it up. But so for 7 years, Ketu Mahadasha means that you're living in the whole of life as if you're living through Ketu, meaning the south node. So it's been a period of letting go and immense focus on my spiritual practice, which was already a huge part of my life. And it's very hard. The pull is so strong to being in my own experience and my own spiritual practice and wanting to be there in terms of offering what I can to make sense of this world that we're trying to make sense of here. And so every time I come to these videos, it's like an inner battle, and it's a very difficult gamble. So when I have to come to the table and try and look at all these global charts, I feel like, do I really? Is this really good? Is this good for me? Is it good for anybody? Because it's almost like this quality of stirring the pot. And so again, I grapple, as I've said many times before, with the desire to know what's going on, and an equal and opposite desire to not know at all, not even check. So there we are. So this is maybe something that you feel very strongly about, and that you find in your own life is causing some of the tension that we're experiencing in this world of this particular moment in time, where a lot of what we're looking at is something that we can. The only way, let's say, through it is through the heart, is through sitting with ourselves in this quiet space of the heart. The tradition also talks about the cave of the heart. And the cave of the heart is not the physical organ. It's the feeling of the heart. It's the heart center. In the chakra system, for example, it's the difference between anahata, which is the heart itself, which beats. Anahata means it's a sound that's made without striking anything. It's a sound that's spontaneous. So there's this beating energy of the heart that is beating us. It's like it's the universal energy that is beating my heart and your heart and everyone's heart, the life force that grows flowers and trees and everything. And then you have the hridaya, which is this center of the heart that is the cave of the heart, and that goes deeper. So we have on the one hand the feeling nature through our heart, but we have the awareness of all of that is part of the heart center. And Leo does represent both of those. Something that's interesting to play around with if you sit in meditation with that and sense your way through. How am I feeling in this moment? Where am I feeling it physically? How am I feeling in relationship to my emotions, maybe to my history, to my mind, to the things that I hearken back on, and my role in this? Because Leo is about our self-expression. It's about showing up, in that beautiful, innocent, childlike way. Leo is all about the child and children, and it's that sense of just, aren't I wonderful? Like, here I am, aren't I wonderful? And until somebody keeps telling you you're not, or until you start a YouTube channel and you get all these comments about things, and you find out how people think you're really not that wonderful, along with the other gorgeous comments, you start to hit up against what you think about yourself. And that becomes the Aquarian energy, which can be a defensive sense of self. a defense against something that society says is okay or that authority says is okay. And authority in the more general sense, not in the sense of an individual, which is more the Capricorn. Like the Capricorn authority is like the boss, the leader of the government, etc. The Aquarian authority is the social tribal authority. It's like what everybody thinks is cool or what everybody thinks is the right way. You know, this is our culture. That's the right way to behave. This is the only way to present yourself socially. Otherwise, you're wrong, for example. So all of these things are the give and take here of the Leo dynamic with the Aquarian dynamic. And when we look at the actual chart itself, not only do we see this very intense energy of Aquarius, like woof, full on stellium of so many things affecting so many other houses, and I'll go through the houses in your chart where they are also impacting you. But it is then this tiny little moon over here, and it's this moon that is trying to figure out, you know, am I okay in all of this, and how do I feel about all of this, and how am I relating to this collective, this moment of our collective, moment looking ahead, let's say, because it's this present moment, but of course we're also looking into the future. So let's look at the chart itself, and then I realized I didn't bring my dates for the lunar family, so I'm going to have to just pause briefly and get those dates. But first we'll look at the chart aspects, because of course you see in my software what I've done is I set it up so that the stronger the aspect, the darker the line. If you have your own software, you can adjust these things. Some people don't like aspects at all, but it's very visual, so it helps. So obviously we've got this dark line that is coming very powerfully from the sun, and a little bit less so. You can see these lines here, those little tiny, slightly less dark lines. Those represent Venus and Mars. They're just a little bit less intense. And then much, much less intense, we've got the Pluto, and probably to a lesser degree, we've got the Mercury. And in a sign-based opposition, they are in opposition. And I think that's relevant because the moon acts quickly. It goes 2.5 days through one sign. And that means that the moon, although it seems to be frozen in time at this 13th degree, 1303 of Leo, it is going to cover over 2 days all of these planets, starting with Pluto, then moving through Mars, the Sun, Venus, and Mercury. So it's an opposition to all of them because of the way the moon moves so quickly. And what it's also doing is creating not only this tension of opposites, but also within the different planets that are shifting, it's creating a tension within the configurations of the planets. And I'm going to start with the ruler of the sun and this configuration in Aquarius, which is Saturn. And again, some of you might use the rulership of Uranus. I'm not going to talk about that here. I prefer to work with the traditional rulers because they make more sense over a timing, in terms of timing. For rulers to move extremely slowly through a sign doesn't really tell us much about the individual life. Saturn, the slowest planet of the traditional rulers, is 2.5 years in a sign, over the space sometimes of 3. So here what we have is Saturn, and if we look at these little lines, then we've got what is called a semi-square. And a semi-square, just like the name implies, is a half of a square. So a square is 90 degrees, and if you look at the clock face, it's like 12:15 kind of thing. And a semi-square is half of that, so it's 45 degrees. And that 45 degrees we could calculate, even if we didn't have that little indicator, you calculate by subtracting 1303 from 2843. And what we get there is this 45 degrees and 40 arc minutes. So what that means is there's a 40 arc minute, less than 1 degree perfection in this small aspect. And that's why it's visible, because these aspects require really tight orbs. When the orb is beyond, say, 2 degrees, these smaller, well, sort of so-called lesser aspects or minor aspects, although they still pack a punch, they're the lesser important aspects. They are really tight orbs, and they should be, because they're telling a more nuanced story. So Here we have a very strong story being told. And what does a semi-square mean? It's a little more difficult to navigate than a square. A square is like, imagine two people coming to a street corner and one is walking perpendicular to the other. At a certain point you arrive and somebody has to make an adjustment. Now with a semi-square, let's imagine you're going to get a train and you're in a hurry and there's somebody else who's in a hurry and they're coming up, but they're coming up on this 45-degree angle. And it's coming up behind you, but it's like, are they going to crash into me or are they going to keep going? And so you really do need to kind of keep your wits about you. It's not quite the same as a semi-sextile. It's a little bit more tense because there's this friction that is there. The semi-sextile is this sense that you're present, I know you're there, but I don't necessarily know quite what to do with that. Whereas with a semi-square, it's like I have to do something about this because this is really uncomfortable, so I can get to my train. And so you have that sense of this discomfort right now. And what is the discomfort? It's between Saturn and between the Sun. So this friction is this issue of the individual. Now, the individual is represented by the Sun archetypally in astrology, and in Aquarius, the Sun is in detriment because it's in the opposite sign of its rulership, which is, of course, Leo. It's hard to find one's self. When the Sun is in Aquarius, there's often a real long quest for identity. There's a real issue of one's sense of agency, even in place in the world, and even purpose. It can take a while because often it comes through identifying with things by opposition. I identify with what I'm not, or I identify with a small collective of people who are different to the rest of people. So the identification is always with reference to someone else. Whereas Leo, the Sun in Leo is just like, yeah, this is me. So, suck it up. This is who I am. Just like that wonderful child. It's like, hey, here I am. This is my little scribble. Isn't that marvelous? And you have this energy of just knowing and radiance and effulgence that Aquarius has a difficult time with. And it's not to say that Leos don't have their issues. I'm only speaking archetypally here. It's to say that the Aquarian archetype is of always having to be in reference to. And that's why it weakens the Sun, because not only in the seasonal sense is it weak in terms of the time of the year, where it's very far from the peak of the summer, for example, but it also is in the sense of I'm only who I am in the context of a crowd or in the context of society. How do I belong? And so it takes a lot more effort to show up as an individual in Aquarius than it does, say, in Leo or in Aries, for example, where the Sun is exalted. And then we put Saturn in Pisces in the mix, which is ruling that, and in a semi-sextile, and Saturn is like, here's the thing, this is the way I see it, and this is the way I've been describing Saturn to you. If you've been following me, you can also, if you're interested in nostalgia of the last 2 or 3 years, you'll find lots of videos that I've done especially in the ingress phase of Saturn in Pisces, 2023. And that is really about finding our stability in terms of our faith. And I think this is more important than ever as we're in a shift. We've got Neptune for the first time in the first lunation here in this Leo full moon. It's the first time that Neptune has been trinal. It's been in a trinal sign for this Leo full moon. It's the first time. And here what we have is this new Neptune that's ruled by Mars instead of ruled by Jupiter after all these years. And we have to find much more clarity around ourself and our individuation and how we step out into the world. And I did this wonderful video with a fantastic conversation that I had with Anne Barr that I posted yesterday, and there so many of you appreciated Anne, and I'm so thrilled for the way she was received by my followers, and thank you so much for giving her such a really warm welcome, and we will definitely have her back on because I had such a blast talking with her. In fact, the hour-and-a-half video that we did was following a 2-hour conversation that we'd already had. So there's lots we can say. That's the Irish gift of the gab. So there we are. So what I'm saying here is that Saturn is now in a slightly different position. It starts to feel like things are becoming urgent because of the shift now of Neptune. and never coming back to Pisces. And Saturn really coming close to the 29th degree, the most unstable in, the instability brought by the critical degree of the zodiac, the very end of Pisces. And that in the Vedic astrology is known as Gandanta. The Gandanta is the area of the switching between the water and fire elements. And the 29th degree anyway, and the 0 degree of any sign is unstable. It's the 0 degree has never been done before, or at least, in the archetype, it's not been done, it's new. And the 29th degree is like all of the energy that has accumulated is coming there. And there's a sense, I know we're moving into the next thing, but just like that semi-square, I don't know what this is going to feel like. And that's this Saturn. So within a very short period of time, so within 13 days of this full moon, we have Saturn joining Neptune in Aries. And then on the 20th, so only, 6 days, less than a week later, they actually conjoin. And that follows the Aquarius eclipse, which I will talk separately about because it's just so massive, as well, because it's squaring Uranus. And so there's going to be a theme that you can look at from the beginning of this year, or even, I mean, you can go back and as long as you want, but especially from the beginning of 2026, notice that we're working our way through this theme of on the precipice of change. And this can make us feel quite edgy. And there again, I say, well, if there's this semi-sextile here between the sun, who am I? What's my identity socially? What's my role? How do I relate, to all of this change and all these people? Who are all these people around me? And how do I relate to them? And then this place that says, what am I standing on? What is the foundation of my faith? And that's that place where you really want to get that sense of being completely unshakable, because the world is shaking right now. And the way to get your unshakable faith through this notion of the Saturn going through Pisces, that's one of these ways that we've been building on that. And that's what I've been encouraging, and I hope you have done. And also from the heart, from the cave of the heart, from the actual heart, from the sense of how do I feel? How am I okay? Am I taking care of myself? Am I in this space of awareness, self-awareness, emotional awareness, a sense of where I can also pitch in and lead, and where I can also be the example. That's Leo in its finest. It's just beaming, just showing up, just doing the thing and leading. And this is what is asked of us right now. So again, because of the 13-degree opposition with the sun, and since the sun is the one in the semi-square with Saturn, that also means that there's going to be an uncomfortable relationship between Saturn and the moon. And that is known as a sesqui-square. So a sesqui-square, if those of you who've been around for like 150-year celebrations, those are called sesquicentennials. So a sesqui-square is a square and a half. And instead of the half square, we now have a square and a half, and that is similarly uncomfortable, but not necessarily as clear. It's something that creates this tension that feels like it's a misalignment. And that can be maybe the best way of describing what would cause anxiety and tension. I am misaligned with what's going on here. I'm not really sure which way to put my vote, or put my money, or put my attention. And feeling that misalignment is something that can create enormous anxiety. And again, it's part of the job or the life mission of a sun in Aquarius to find one's proper place in society and still exist as a separate individual, still be aware of one's self. And this is the task of this Leo full moon. And especially so because now, as I mentioned, the Neptune going into Aries, and I've done a separate video on that, so I'm not going to go too deeply in that. And that's also, again, what Anne and I spoke about in the most recent upload. Listen to some of those ideas because that might help you as well. But what I'm seeing here in this intensification of the Aries, the stellium in Aries, and this week, as I'm preparing this video, this is now the 24th of January, this has been Davos week. This has been the week where the World Economic Forum connects. And again, my morbid curiosity, my addiction to global events overtook me, and I couldn't help but notice what they were talking about, and the things that they were talking about with reference to AI had me thinking again about this Neptune, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which we're coming upon. And I think it's helpful to notice this now because this is the theme of February, and this full moon is something that we're becoming aware of in terms of our sensitivities around that. And this is a full moon is a culmination point. It's an awareness of past events, but it's an awareness of also what that energy of Leo represents for us as an individual, and of course as individuals getting together in a collective like Aquarius. So this AI story is a really big deal because it is really, there's no turning back from this. And where previously Neptune in Aries, as I'll again look in the video that I will link below this, to know more about that. There's so many issues around national boundaries and about the formation of boundaries and creating countries out of nothing, thin air, just poof, there's a country for you, there's a boundary for you, let's draw this straight line through this particular country, or you know, group of people, separate them, doesn't matter. And now what we're coming into, especially with this 0 degree element, is I think the sense that we are in a space of boundarylessness, and that the borders that we used to think of as hard and fast, where we carry our passport and we say, you know, let me pass, I have the correct documentation. This will be completely changing because it is going to be electronic now. It's going to be AI now. It's going to require your face, your eyes, your hands as the authority rather than a passport. There's no more piece of paper that is going to define who you are. You just show up and you will be scanned in a biometric way, as is already happening in many countries. And this, I think, is the way we're going. I don't really see how it can be different because barring some catastrophic event where passports become irrelevant anyway, there will be this inevitable, inexorable move towards this technocracy, which is, I do feel, part of the bigger story, especially once Uranus goes into Gemini and forms that mini grand trine. Again, as if you've been following me long enough, you'll know that I'm a bit of a Rachel realist or a Debbie Downer on this front of especially the Pluto in Aquarius, that is about things that are happening now that we are going to see more of. And this makes it even more important to identify what does it mean to be human. This is the Aries, you know, the notion of sovereignty and the notion of what it means to be an individual. And here we have this opportunity, playing with this feeling of what do I feel in this moment? Where is my anxiety coming from? Where is my sense of something out of alignment? Where am I aligning unconsciously? This is an important thing. Where am I putting my energy without realizing it? You know, like in the previous video that I did, I can't remember when, about these Aquarian signatures, about the conjunctions in Aquarius, is that for me that's very strongly related to this notion of ideology, and where is the ideology that I'm living through actually mine, or am I being kind of corralled into it? Is it subtly being imposed on me, which is part of the Pluto-Neptune sextile phase? And Anne and I broached that subject too, and I think we're going to look at that more and more because it continues. The Pluto-Neptune sextile continues for a few years already. I think it's really into 2030 or even 2032 before it really starts to separate. So yeah, so this is a big deal. It's a big deal, and something that we want to understand from the place of what does it mean to be human? And then with the Saturn in Pisces for the very last time, we won't have a lunation with Saturn in Pisces ever in 29 years. Certainly not in this configuration. So this is a unique moment on the threshold of this very unstable change that we're going through. Unstable and inevitable change. And so that Saturn in Pisces is saying, what are you building your faith on? And the Aquarian energy says, what is the ideology that is your driving force? And the two, when they work in harmony, when they work together, it takes you down the best possible road. And when there's a sense of either a vacillating faith or a lack of faith, that is, when I say faith, I'm not talking about religiosity. That's more of a Sagittarian element of faith. But the Pisces way of understanding the vastness of what it means to be alive, the vastness of the universe, the vastness of humanity, and the unity consciousness that we have. That is the type of faith where you say, well, life is not the whole story, so-called human life. There, my teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, he would never say happy birthday. So if somebody was having a birthday, it would be happy continuation day. And that was because the teaching is built into everything he would do. The Buddhist teaching is that there is no birth and no death, that we are an emergence of things that arise in the right moment in time. That's just a collection of events that arise and something happens that comes together, and when the conditions are not right, they fall apart. And that's the same with our birth and our death. There is no hard and fast, like this is it, that's the end, that's the end of story, done, or this is the absolute beginning, that's the beginning of the story. Like if I read a natal chart, for example, I don't read it from the day that you're born. I read it from everything that is happening up to that point and through your life going forward as a continuum, because we are part of a bigger story. And if we think about that, that's that Piscean, that's the advantage of having a Pisces stellium. But that Piscean energy that is also reinforced by the fact that Rahu is there. The North Node is in Pisces still until the 27th of July for the North Node, which is the one I use, for the True Node rather, which is the one I use. And it's something to just consider again, and have a sense of where am I? What have I got that feels like it's so powerful in me, and my awareness of self, my awareness of what life represents, capital L, life. And what is this whole big picture of what it means to be alive? I can abstract from the details. This is why Mercury doesn't do well in Pisces, because it abstracts from details, where Mercury in its home sign of Virgo and in its element, in its exaltation sign, it wants to know absolutely all the details, the dot on the I, the cross on the T, the columns have to be straight, everything has to be just right. Whereas in Pisces, it's much more conceptual. It's much more about pulling threads together and seeing a bigger picture that is sometimes difficult to put in words. And you will have heard that maybe even now in my videos, where sometimes I have ideas and they're coming so fast, I actually have difficulty putting them in words. And that's not just because Neptune was on my Mercury for the last 2 years, but that's part of having Mercury, especially at the 29th degree of Pisces. So, right, you see the story that we're creating here, or the story that we're participating in, is as much about this moment in time as it is an existential story. So just to say that, it's an important thing. There are a couple of other aspects that are really strong, or at least worthy of note, and I'll go by the strongest to the weakest. So the other aspects that are drawing attention are the Eris-Chiron conjunction. I've done, again, a separate video on that, and I invite you to listen to that because it still holds. It's a pattern that began in 2025 and continues into this year, and that will be exact on the 19th of March, and then they start to separate, but they will remain very close together really through 2026, and very briefly in 2027, especially because Eris is so slow moving. So it is part of a bigger story that it just happens to be precise on the 19th of March, and they're very, very close together. So they're just over 1.5 degrees of conjunction now, and that creates another sesqui square. So we have a sesqui square from Saturn to the Moon. Remember that difficulty in feeling once, like where do I put my energy? Where do I align myself? What should I align myself with? And again, the message being, align yourself with yourself. First and foremost, before you start aligning yourself with anything outside of yourself. And here I think the message is reinforced by the Chiron and Eris conjunction, which tells us a lot about, and we spoke about this also with Anne in yesterday's video, it tells us a lot about our wounding, but if we only stick to that trite label of Chiron as the wounded healer, I think I could scream if I hear that again. It's so much more complex. It's about understanding where our own insecurities and our own foibles and our own potential for sabotaging ourselves, in this case quite literally because it's Aries, is also potentially causing us disruption in the very area we'd like to advance, right? In the very area that we would like to move forward. And the Aries quality is about this hypocrisy, seeing things in a way that is recognizing where people are playing this kind of game, but that when you see that hypocrisy, you want to recognize that we're also playing this kind of game. So this is part of the bigger picture of this conjunction here. And here it is in this it says squeeze square with the south node this time. And so we're looking at this 135-degree angle where the previous, this semi-square is 45. This is a 135-degree angle that requires, again, a lot of attention and adjustment to find out where one fits into all of that. What am I aligning with? And the south node in Virgo has been asking us to let go of this sense of how things have to be a particular way to feel comfortable. How things, this has been a cultural thing that has grown very, very strongly, perhaps especially with Neptune in Pisces. I need things to appear this way so that I can be happy, and if they don't appear that way, it's your fault. You're wrong, or you're flawed, or you're an idiot, or whatever the thing is. And this is something to look at. Where is it that you can shed notions? Because, of course, we're talking about Virgo, which is with reference to Mercury and the way that we think about things, and that potential for over-analyzing, over-thinking, over-judging can be a source of anxiety, can be a source of real stress. And we're going to have more energy around this axis because the eclipses are always going to be, right through the end of August, the eclipses are going to be on this axis. And even in 2027, we'll have another overlapping eclipse there where Virgo takes a lot of attention. It pulls a lot of our attention this year. So look at that right now as well. Where am I finding that it's difficult to find my place because I'm being unrelenting in my need for things to be a particular way? And recognize that in the face of change, in the face of something vastly different and new and really hard to pin down, we really don't have the luxury of having things feel comfortable. And if we think about the Pluto in Cancer generation, that was called the Great Generation. That was the generation that went through the First and the Second World War and the Depression as well. So we need to draw more on that notion of can do and that stick-to-itiveness and that feeling of we're in this together. We're going to try and help each other out here rather than worry about how I individually can feel comfortable. And if we come back to this notion of the moment in time that we're in, we're going to create havoc. We're going to create a lot of separation and tension within society if the individual demands something that is not supporting the collective. And that doesn't mean following everything that the collective wants, because again, we're thinking from the heart, remember? We're thinking from what is appropriate, what are my values and the way that I see my role in the world. But we also have to recognize I'm one of a multitude. I have no special privileges. I have no special entitlement. And this is the shadow side of Leo, is to feel entitled. So this could be the question of these configurations, which is, what do I feel entitled to? What am I getting all sulky about that I think I'm entitled to things showing up in a particular way that makes me feel comfortable? And this might even extend back longer, because there's something that happened in the 90s, which I still quite haven't got my head around, which I label the sort of gold star generation, where especially in the West, all of a sudden, just eating your breakfast was subject to receiving an award. You go through kindergarten, you get a graduation ceremony, you get a gold star for just whatever, like tying your shoelace, like everything is based on, aren't you amazing? And in an excessive way that actually leaves the child doubting themselves rather than actually feeling boosted, because it's so conditional. And with Leo, when it's unconditional, when we recognize the glory of who we are in an unconditional way, that's where the power of Leo shines in. When it's conditional on receiving a gold star or getting attention or having some kind of accolade that says, you know, you've done the right thing, you ate your breakfast, you graduated from kindergarten. When you look at that, you think, well, it fragilizes the ego to the point that their reference point is outside of themselves. We need to, in this Aries energy of now, really pull that back and recognize where we have resources that don't require anybody else's approbation, don't need to hear good job. You know, so this is a generational thing. Maybe I'm just getting old, I don't know. But so these are the things I'd like you to think about as we're going around this time of the Leo full moons. Well, a full moon is really like a 3-day event because, as I said, the moon itself, the lunation, takes about 2.5 days to get through the sign. So you could say kind of the day before, the day of, and the next day. So the 31st of January, the 1st of February, and the 2nd of February. Or you can extend that a little bit if you're way out in Australasia or the Far East, for example. You can extend that towards February. But you could take those days and really look at things and try and assess what's going on. Right, and what we have as well, and this there's 2 more things that I need to finish up on here. And what we have as well is a separating now, a separating sextile, good old-fashioned sextile, between Saturn and Uranus, which was exact in the last week of January. And that energy is now breaking up in a way that won't show up until Uranus goes into Gemini, but by that time Saturn will be in Aries. And so that sextile this is the last thing that we'll see of the Saturn in Pisces ruled by Jupiter and the Uranus in Taurus ruled by Venus, which in turn is ruled by this Saturn, and which is kind of like, again, asking Venus to be a bit serious here, with a sense of this Jupiterian quality. And of course, the moon is ruling Jupiter and the sun is ruling the moon. So it all comes back to Aquarius one way or another. So the point being that this sextile is over and in this form, in this energy. And that again is something that has a lot to do, if we expand out in terms of a bigger picture, of our values, where Uranus has been shaking up what our values are, and even in terms of a very literal sense of possession and what we own and how we use money and how we rely on things that may not actually be so reliable. And then the Saturn in Pisces, once again, saying, you know, how did you ground this sense of self, or how did you ground your sense of faith? How did you ground your awareness of the higher law? Venus rules like human law. If you think of Libra, Venus is like the arbiter of what is fair and what is just. We see that that's kind of falling apart too, but especially with Uranus and Taurus. But Jupiter rules divine law, and Jupiter is ruling this Saturn, and that's why Pisces is more concerned, and Sagittarius to a degree as well, is more concerned with the overall moral law. Pisces is concerned with karma, and Saturn is the lord of karma. It is the ultimate sort of end of the line that says, okay, you did that. This is what's next. This is what's coming, and that's not a punishment thing. Again, that's the human law that says, oh, you did that, and therefore you deserved it. Like missing out on elements of things that have that we can't grasp with the human mind. So Jupiter is that sense of, you know, beyond Mercury. It is the awareness of justice, or what is the, let's say, the higher mind, the higher vision, the higher sense of what is just and right. And that comes basically down to the golden rule. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto yourself. And there's probably a more modern way of saying that, but that's what I grew up with. And or if you like, the 4 noble truths of the Buddha, that there is suffering and that suffering has a cause, and we can name the causes. We know what they are. That's the 3rd noble rule. And the 4th one is the Eightfold Path towards liberation from suffering. And what that represents is right living, right livelihood, right speech, right thinking, all of those, taking right action, all of those the Eightfold Path represents doing the right thing. And if we boil it all down and condense it, it's the golden rule. And every culture, every religion has some variant of expressing the golden rule. So it is universal. That's very Piscean, as opposed to local. So the Venusian law is local. It's national, it's a bylaw, it's a cultural law, etc. But the Piscean law, where Saturn, the Lord of Karma, is quite absolute. It's like, this is the way the universe works. This is how it is. And we're really coming to the end of something here where I think if we don't really understand this message and we don't really get how important this moment in time is before we step into the energy of the future, we might just find ourselves really, really caught up in the human notion of justice and righteousness, and find ourselves in mysterious ways caught up in the consequences of karma, or the consequences of universal law. So I'll finish up with the chart delineation here, which is to say that Leo represents righteousness. It is integrity. It is the sun shining all the time and indifferent to who it shines down on. It is reliable. It is the center of our solar system, thus the name. It is the representation of consciousness. And because it's constant and consciousness doesn't fluctuate, consciousness is not intellectual awareness. This is the challenge of using language, because in the Eastern way of looking at consciousness, it is all that is. It is, everything is happening in consciousness, in that awareness. And the sun represents that, because it is the constant, unflinching, unchanging element of luminosity that represents our self. You know, the higher awareness knows that I am constant. There's a me that was wearing diapers, and the same me is now, you know, almost 60 years old, and that is still the consciousness that I am, that I refer to, not the personality. And so we can really draw on this as an opportunity to really get clear. What do I have faith in after all these years now of Saturn in Pisces and Neptune now having left Pisces? For anyone alive is not going to see it coming back into Pisces, or most of the rest of the zodiac for that matter. And so we're really at the end of something, and we get to decide how we want to go beyond that. And these next few weeks and into the middle of 2026 are going to be a massive lesson in how to do that. I forgot to mention our lonely friend here, Jupiter, the only unaspected planet here, unless we want to give it an inconjunct with Venus. So we could still do that and say, yes, it's inconjunct Venus. So some tension, again, around values and around what, you know, the human value is compared to the divine or the human law, as opposed to divine law. That's one way of looking at that. But Jupiter itself is peregrine. It's not aspecting anything. It's kind of there on its own, and that I find very significant too, because it's almost like saying that a planet that is peregrine just is, it's in its own place. It doesn't refer to anything else, and it doesn't need anything else. It's just kind of holding its own, and this is something to reflect on in terms of what is divine law, what is my faith, and what do I have faith in, what is my relationship to nurturing, self-nurturing, care for others, care for the human family, care for my family, care for the nation, or what we think of as a nation, what will, I think, soon be very distinctly different compared to what we used to think of as nationhood or nationality. And that's something that we can reflect on. Well, Jupiter is moving very, very slowly here. I'm going to back up to 15 degrees 5 arc minutes, which is actually the exaltation degree of Jupiter in Cancer. And it's also on Sirius, where the fixed star that I've spoken about before, it's going to station on Sirius, which is just shy of 15 degrees now. And so this is, again, maybe I'll just say that it's time to get serious. There, I said it. Okay, I'm just going to pause here for a second. I'm going to get those dates for you, so we have the lunation dates, and then we can do the sign by sign, okay? All right, everybody. So here we've got the dates now for you. This is the lunation that is part of this particular lunar family. So if you've been following me for a while, you know about the lunar families. And if you don't, you can find a video, I think linked below. I will link it below so you can find that, or you can find it on my channel to understand how to find lunar families, because it's not there's different ways of finding the lunation. One is that, of course, it's within the month or the month. So we have, of course, the new moon, and then the cycle completes at the following new moon. And within that, we have the first quarter moon and the full moon phase, the third quarter phase, and then the the ending phase, and then the new moon phase, which are simultaneous. So, you can also start at the full moons. You can go from full moon to full moon. It doesn't really matter. In India, they do both, for example. It depends on your culture or your preference. It's just that I tend to work with the new moon phase to the following new moon phase. And when we do that, we arrive at the 4th of August, 2024 for this particular lunation. Oh, and the other way of looking at it would be 6 months ago, like just in the phase of the sign of the lunation. But this is following the degree point. So here is the lunar family that follows the degree points, which retrogress by 1 or 2 degrees each time in each cycle. So what we're looking at is 4th of August, 2024, 12 degrees and 34 arc minutes of Leo. That is the new moon that started this full moon that is culminating right now. The first quarter phase of that, the opening quarter, was the 4th of May, 2025 at 14 degrees and 21 arc minutes of Leo. And then we have the 1st of February, now, 2026, or again, for some of you watching, it will be the 2nd, but on universal time, I'm giving you universal time dates. It's 1st of February, and that's at 13 degrees and 3 arc minutes of Leo, as we've seen. And the closing square of this series of lunar families will be the 1st of November, 2026, and that's at 9 degrees and 25 arc minutes of Leo. And then the new moon that actually continues the next cycle, or that ends this cycle and continues the next cycle, will be the 2nd of August of 2027, and that will be at 9 degrees and 54 arc minutes of Leo. Okay, so you can note those dates down if you want to follow them going back or forward in time, and it can be very helpful for timing things. You'll find that there's a lot of things that happen around those times that make sense if we look 9 months ahead or 9 months back, and so on. So you'll notice the full cycle is 3 years. The full moon cycle is 18 months from the lunation period, and the quarter moons are 9 months from the new moon or the full moon phase. And that's why they're also called lunar gestation periods, because it's a 9-month cycle. Right, so enough about that. Let's move from sign to sign. We're going to go and find Aries here on the ascendant. And as I do that, for those of you who like to mention in the comments that the degree of the moon is incorrect, notice that I'm moving the chart around so that I can change the chart and put different signs on the ascendant. And you'll notice that the original chart had a Libra ascendant, and here we have Aries, and that means that a fortiori, we've got the moon changing degrees because we've just moved about 12 hours, and as the moon shifts regularly, every 2 hours, the moon moves a couple of degrees. Every hour, the moon moves a couple of degrees. So, no, it's the other way around. Anyway, I'm getting myself confused. I'm just going to focus on Aries, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. So Aries, this is your first lunation with Neptune in your sign now for good. That's a big event that we will describe more in other videos, but just to keep that in mind, that this is something novel already, and that your awareness needs to come quite literally from your self-expression. You must listen to the beginning more than any other sign, because you are embodying this energy quite literally, because you have what's called the natural zodiac. So when you have an Aries ascendant particularly, or the houses from the Aries sun, which is, Aries sun is exalted, so all the more reason to look at that if it's your sun. And then the moon as well. So we're counting houses, like signs and houses from your sign, and it's really very literal for you, Aries, which is why Aries is so upfront. And these are the things that you learn if you follow my courses. The meanings of the signs are very complex and deep. It's not just a list of keywords. There's a reasoning behind that, and this is one of the reasons why Aries is so in your face, because all the signs and houses align. And so here we have that stronger meaning of the full moon in your fifth house. And that can also represent children, of course, if you have any, something that you're realizing around the notion of children or having children, or not wanting children, or whatever the thing is. And whatever this thing might represent, it's coming through how you express yourself. Or is this something that is what I want from my heart? Because the fifth house and Leo, the fifth sign, represent the heart, my heart's desire, the way that I express my love, the way I express my romantic desire, let's say, and of course my creative impulse. And then, of course, on the opposite side of that, we have the sun, which is reflecting your future and the vision that you have, and your ruler is there. We've just had Mars and Pluto conjoining at 3 degrees of Aquarius. That was on the 27th, 28th of February of January. So just before, 4 or 5 days before, what's my math here? 4 days before, this was the conjunction of your ruler with Pluto. So there is something really, really big brewing for you in terms of your vision, in terms of your future, and how you decide to participate in that. And if there's been any shifting or doubting around that, this would be the opportunity to really pull in and check in with your heart and check in with your heart's desire and really look at what it is that is coming through. And that might be a very short-term thing. It might be something that is like, what do I feel like I want to put my, short-term energy in, or a short-term goal, because you're all about the goals. And especially Mars there in the future is very focused on future. But I think, given all of the conjunctions that have been taking place, and especially because Mars was also doing all of these very important conjunctions with the Sun and Venus, and then having this focus taken to your sense of your 10th house career, your vocation, your personal ambitions. I think this is an opportunity for you to really continue that story of what is the bigger arc of my life? What is the bigger story that I want to play in? In that sense of I'm playing this role right now. What do I want to do in this moment? And how do I want to do that? And still, you also have Jupiter there in your fourth house. So there's something that at this moment might feel a little unsettled in terms of your perhaps inner psychology or even emotional life, or even your quite literal home and homeland and family and so on. But that will soon settle down. So we're about 6 weeks away from Jupiter stationing to move from the 15th degree point of your fourth house. So there's something here that you can really learn from. If you have, let's say, anything from 11 to 15 degrees of Aries, the moon will be trining you and the sun will be sextiling you. And that's already something very supportive, you see. So this is something that you can really feel that's very favorable. It doesn't matter if you don't have specifically those degree points, but that will be something that becomes quite relevant or quite personal to you. And that's favorable in the sense of you feel ready for this change. But nonetheless, it's a trinal sign. It's a fellow fire sign where the moon is. And where the Aquarian energy is it's a sextile to you in your 11th house. And that's the air sign, and that's also favorable to you. But there's a lot of air with Aquarius full of all these planets in this massive stellium. So the air can be destabilizing, right? I should have mentioned that in the beginning. So notice that you might be needing to put more conscious awareness on that fifth house area of your life and your heart and your emotional nature and what you personally want to feel is emerging through you, and just move a little bit away from the, let's say, erratic potential of the very airy Aquarius energy that's so strong right now. And so again, shutting away some of the influences that come from social media or society in general, or politics and the usual things. The 11th house is all of those things. There will be a lot of activity around your social groups and your friends, potentially an elder sibling. Jupiter, Mercury rules your house of siblings, and it's in the 11th house, which represents an elder sibling to you, because you're 3 houses away from the sibling, so you're the younger one to the older. If we take the elder sibling as the first house, it's 1, 2, 3, and you're the third house, meaning the sibling of your elder sibling. That's how we find that. And again, you can learn these things in astrology lessons with me if you want. So sit with yourself, be quiet for a little bit around this full moon, and take the time that you can. It's happening around a weekend, so often for many people there's a little bit less going on, and you can maybe extract yourself from work-related things, for example, and take a look at all of those different aspects of what's coming through you, as opposed to what seems to be coming at you from the world outside. All right, Aries, I will see you in the next video. Good luck with that. So Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, this is happening in your 4th house of home, and the Moon is your exaltation ruler. And there's a lot that you can learn from wherever the Moon goes, just as Venus, your actual ruler, is in the 10th house in opposition to the Moon. And so this is a dynamic between what is my inner experience of security or self, or feeling stable, or my psychological sense of self, or my emotional sense of self, or quite literally home, homeland, lineage, and what is being kind of drawing my attention, let's say, in the worldly sense of my worldly duties or my parental duties, or what's going on in the career or vocation aspect of my life, my personal ambitions and so on. And whatever that has been for you in the last couple of weeks that have been so heavily focused on that 10th house area for you, this is an opportunity for you to withdraw and consciously say, okay, I'm going to stay home here and focus inwards. And I think most Taurians will be happy with that advice, because this doesn't take much to get a Taurian to stay at home. But this is the opportunity where you can really just enjoy, really just sit with yourself and enjoy the sense of knowing internally, without having always to respond to external stimuli. Now, if you have committed to stuff and you really have to do things and so on, you can still use this event, this full moon, as an opportunity to really see, is my heart still aligned with this? Is this still where I want to put my attention? And this can be quite literally a professional story, like maybe a job, for example. It can be a parental obligation, a work obligation. It doesn't have to be like a fancy profession, but just a job that you're doing. Because Venus rules your 6th house of your work, as well as your 1st house. And there might be something that has invited a lot of newness and change up there, especially over the last couple of weeks. Especially when Venus met up with Pluto. That was like the week of the 20th to the 24th, 25th. Well, actually from the 20th till the 27th, 28th, when everybody was piling up on Pluto there. That's really the week to look back on, to inform yourself where things have maybe only just begun. You just planted 1 seed or 2 or 3, or you've got this kind of sense of there's a new thing happening here, but you still would benefit from sitting quietly with yourself and saying, okay, that feels exciting. It feels like there's a lot going on, but am I putting my attention in the right direction? Venus will slowly move into Pisces over the next couple of weeks, and that puts her in exaltation. When your ruler is in exaltation, it's a better time to take action. It's better for you in terms of making decisions, and that's your house of the future. And that will also be after Saturn has moved out of that place of your chart, and also where we'll find a lot of activity in terms of the last eclipse cycles of the year. And I'll come back and describe also the many, many conjunctions that are also going to be happening in Pisces, the many transactions, let's say, that are going on in Pisces even after Saturn leaves. But it's something to reflect on, you know, how do I see my future? And the 11th house also, where she's going after, you'll see this by the time of the eclipse that's coming up. Venus will be on the North Node. So this will be, in fact, a bit less than 2 weeks away. You'll be more like, think about it from sort of a week to 10 days from now, where Venus goes into exaltation, and that becomes a much better way of looking at things coming forward. And that might have to do with the money that you earn from what you do if you're still actively working, and that's most especially true if you are working for yourself, if you're self-employed, or if you're doing something where the money comes through exactly what you've done, like you might be working on commission or something like that, as opposed to like employee income. Maybe that's the new thing. Maybe that's what you're realizing. I'm no longer going to be an employee. I need to be self-employed, and so on. These are different ways that that can shape up, which can only be really seen through your natal chart. But anyway, some food for thought. You're soon also to be rid of Uranus, but that will still be another 3 months away. So you want to think about how you can still find yourself in a place of change and work with the change, move towards the change rather than feeling threatened by it. And you'll find that actually a lot of that future focus that's coming forward in the next month or two is going to benefit from you deciding, okay, I get it, I need to change. Because Uranus will actually be stationing direct just after this. I forgot to mention that. Uranus will be stationing on the 4th of February, 3rd till the 4th of February, depending on where you live. And that is where you'll start to feel like, okay, this is where I start to move forward in this new thing, which is not entirely new because you've already been looking at it. You've been, at the very least, side-eyeing it for a little while. All right, good luck with that, Taurus. I'll see you in the next video. Gemini, this is happening in your third house, which is all about your kind of your comfort zone. And the moon, when it's in your third house, is in the house of its joy traditionally, because the moon changes, waxes and wanes, and it's all about connection and relationships of all kinds in terms of our emotional side of the relationships. And so it's there in the third house. I'm very happy in the third house, where you have a sense of awareness. That's reflection on the mind as well, which is a reference to the moon. And that dynamic is maybe showing you new ways of thinking, new ways of expressing yourself. It's a communication sector of your chart as well. If you are looking into new business relationships, that's also a business-related house. It's all kinds of contracts and exchanges with people of all different kinds, and your siblings included, and family members, and your early childhood and things like that that are third house related, and your local space and the things that you do on an everyday level. Look at all of that from the place of, you know, is this working for me on a practical level? You know, quite literally, is my mind, you know, is my mind working for me on a practical level, or is it working against me? Am I needing to shine a light into my I don't know, communications or thinking process? And is that still working for me? Because there's a lot of very strong input here from the more ideological aspects of your chart. And your ruler is up there in the 9th house. So where you might get excited by ideas and beliefs and ideology and a political leitmotif or an idea around this is the way, this is the thing, you might, where you slow it down, let's say, and you integrate and you listen from a very personal place, you might settle in and say, how does that feel for me to participate in that ideology or participate in that sense of me in the crowd, as it were, or me with this belief or this philosophical idea or, you know, political opinion, etc. Because things are changing rapidly now, and it's a good, you know, you're often you will take decisions very, very quickly, but then change your mind, or you might find that you hesitate to decide and you don't want to change, you don't want to take a decision. And that moon in your third house is part of that story, because your third house is Leo. You're very kind of stuck with what it already is sometimes. And when the moon is there, you can see both sides. It's like, oh yeah, but that could be good, but maybe that's good too. And this is something to really slow down so you can hear it and really listen. What am I saying? What am I agreeing to? What's the bargain I'm making? And is that working for me? So also, Mercury, your ruler, will go retrograde in Pisces. Again, if you've got the 2026 videos, you will know all of these things already. And your ruler, Mercury, goes retrograde 3 times a year, roughly. And this year, it's going retrograde each time in water. And that is going to be very, very connected to your work environment. And I'll talk more about that, or you can get those videos for 2026. They're really not expensive for 2.5 hours of solid information. And here you will understand how important these decisions are, because they're affecting your career, your work, your reputation, your money story. And that is something that you're kind of on the precipice of. So maybe part of this feeling of the, like, what do I believe? What do I have faith in? What's my ideology? What do I feel my purpose is? Think of it as supporting your career, supporting what it is that you decide. Not that this is the absolute end of the line and this is like a one and done decision, because Mercury retrograde in your 10th house is precisely that. It's like, I think I might have to rethink this thing that I just said yes to. But just, the more you think about it now, the less you have to rethink it later. And do listen to the introduction, because these are philosophical questions that we need to be asking at these times, because we're really on the precipice of a big social change, so big deal. And that's your house of the future, and society and your participation in it is deeply affected by the Saturn-Neptune conjunction and the transit that they will have in your 11th house as well. And more about that in other videos. I've already done some, and I will be doing many, many more. So good luck with this, Gemini, and I'll see you in the next video. Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Of course, your ruler is the Moon, so whenever there's a lunation, it's always going to be relevant to you in some way. And so here we have the Moon in your second house of money. So money is a big story right now, or your values as well. Your personal self-worth. There may be some issues that you need to sit with and wonder, what is my self-worth? Am I doubting something about that? Am I worried too much about, I don't know if it's the future or somebody else's opinion, or what I am grappling with in this moment? Like, I don't know about everybody else, but I've got my moon and the ascendant in Cancer, and I've just discovered that not only am I going to have quite a big tax bill to pay for last year, but I also have quite a big VAT. There's two kinds of tax that we have to pay, VAT bills. So I'm kind of like, oh, there's this feeling of, wow, okay, I thought that was sorted, but I realize now that it's not. And so it changes the whole perspective. And it's temporary, and these are things that are solvable. So just to give you an example, it's like it's a tax bill. It's not going to kill me. It's just that it's different to what I had assumed. And that's part of this 8th house story for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. And now we're seeing the second house is, where do I put my attention in terms of organizing finances, organizing money and this, I have an accountant. It's not like I'm doing this on my own. God help me. I think all cancers should have, all water signs should have an accountant. And so this is something that might be a concern for some of you out there. And if not, it can also be a relational dynamic that is about money. It could be how you share money with your loved one, with your spouse, through inheritance, an awareness of something that is coming through the family, and a story about the family. The second house is our family in the sense of what supports us. So everything that supports us comes through the second house. That can also include issues around food and diet. Perhaps that's something too, where you're realizing, okay, I recognize there's some aspect of how I'm eating, or maybe if it's about substance, what substance I might be taking and that's not good for me, or I'm recognizing how it's not being what I thought it was. This could even be supplements. It doesn't have to be necessarily some kind of illicit thing or even a pharmaceutical thing, but you're testing things about what is right for you right now. And that self-awareness is coming through what you value. And of course, always include yourself in that. What is my value? Um, the second house is your resources of all kinds, like what's available to you. And you also want to think about yourself as a resource, especially for Cancer. You are your resource. That's Leo, right? So it's the self, it's a notion of me, or what I can contribute and how I can be there as the tiger mom, or as the loving person, or as the radiance for other people. And that's part of what you can use as a resource. So again, that's quite a, it'll be, for some of you it'll apply and for others not at all. The blessing here is that Jupiter is in the first house for Cancer, although it's still retrograde for another 6 weeks at this point, or a little bit less now. It's still really helpful. Jupiter is Jupiter, and even retrograde, it still brings some notions of what can support you, what is helpful for you. And you've got also Saturn at the top of your chart in the ninth house, asking your highest principle, what is my purpose in life, and have I really understood that, and have I built a foundation around what I have faith in? And that's very strong for Cancer. What I was saying in the introduction part of this video is very important around that sense of finding inner faith and stability. And the eclipses will come back to your sign. There will be, in 2026, a lot of energy still for Pisces and Virgo, referencing this, and not in your sign, in this house where Saturn is in your sense of purpose. So the eclipses are each time going to be emphasizing your purpose based on your Jupiter awareness of self, based on the Saturn in your ninth, which is your awareness of your belief system. And even if we take the eighth house stellium, based on what you understand deep inside, that can be a psychological awareness, an awareness of your intimate relationships, whether they're working or not working. Are you ending some? Are you adding some? This is also where you'll find the dates that I gave at the beginning of the introduction, or in the introduction video, the lunar family dates. You can look at those to see where this cycle will show you results, or this is showing you results based on the previous cycle. So all of this is very personal for Cancer. It's a sense of what am I getting from others, or what am I contributing to others? What are my resources? What's available to me at a time where I feel like there's a lot that I can do, but maybe this is the final push to feeling like, okay, now I get it. This is the way forward. This is the thing, because of that ninth house training you with that last gasp of Saturn, and then Saturn Neptune going into your 10th house, which is really significant, and that we've talked about in other videos, and I'll continue to talk about that. So use this full moon to really sense your way forward in terms of your personal self-worth, your worth, what the valuables and the money that you have to hand, what you have as a resource, how you use yourself as a resource, and also what you value in life in a general sense, because that is also part of what defines your purpose. So there's a lot here that you can work with. There may have been also quite a lot of psychological turbulence, or maybe turbulence within a marriage, or a marriage type relationship, or with clients. If you have clients, there can be some turbulence with clients. There can be new ways of working with clients, or working with your spouse, or working with colleagues, if it's a bit, because the seventh house is business as well, and the eighth house is what comes through that. So that can also be something, and the Mars is ruling your 10th house of your career, as well as the 5th house of entrepreneurship. So there's something there that you might be contending with, but it still comes back to the story of money, you see, or your self-worth. Where do I draw the line? That's really what it boils down to. So good luck with that, Cancer, and I'll see you in the next video. And Leo, here's your more than 2 minutes this time, I promise. I laughed when I saw that comment. So yes, I know you felt cheated, but this is your full moon, and this is all about you. So not only do you get this segment, but you got that whole introduction. So go for it, enjoy, soak up all of that time and attention, because this is about you, and this is about your sense of how am I feeling about me in this moment in time. And of course there's always going to be this axis of the me with the other, because it's on the first house, seventh house axis, even if it's sun and moon, because that we're talking about 7 houses away from you where we find Aquarius. It's your opposite polarity. And so there's a lot of energy. Your ruler is over there in the 7th house looking at other people for partnership ideas, or what's going on in partnership. What is starting in partnership. Like we know Leo that you just may have met when I was talking with Anne Barr on the video I just uploaded previously. She's a Leo sun, and we noticed when and Leo lots actually, big Leo, and we noticed that the moment we started our conversation, not the second when we recorded the video, it was already after 2 hours of chatting. When we started our chat, we had the Sun and the Pluto conjunction exact at that moment. That was on the 23rd, exact to the minute. And this is the kind of thing you might have been seeing for yourself, where you're seeing how new correspondences are coming in, new relationships, new ways of connecting with people, new ways of seeing yourself through other people. This is a very good use of this full moon, and recognizing, okay, how am I seeing myself in relationship to what I can do or who I can be with others or for others, including clients, because the 7th house is the house of your clients as well as the business in general, if you're running your own business or business colleagues, for example. So it was very literal in terms of Anne, but I suspect that many of you will have that showing up in your life as well. And think of it, even if it's a friend, a good friend, or an important person in your life on that one-on-one level, you're learning about yourself, you're seeing yourself, an awareness of you through the other. I would think as well that you can also sit with things because there's been so much change and so much accelerated newness coming through here with that 7th house, that with all those conjunctions in your opposite sign, including your own sun, your ruler, I think this would be a good time to really just take a breath and sit with things and really reflect. How do I feel about this? Is this working for me? Is this, and here you can really literalize that, is this the image I want to project? Is this the thing that I want going forward that suits me and who I feel myself to be? This would be a really good time to reflect on those questions. There is this, as I pointed out in the beginning, this feeling of I need to adjust to something. And that would also be a good time to really sit with yourself, sit in stillness and listen. Listen to that inner voice of your intuition. So fire signs have great intuition. I mean, most people have great intuition if they're listening. I think part of the problem of not having intuition is that you're not listening. You're talking maybe too much. And I'm not saying you, Leo, I'm saying one is talking too much, or one is distracted outwardly, or following other people and other people's needs. And that's why you're not feeling intuitive. But Leo, you have the potential for intuitive, like highlighting or expansion, we could call it, really, really strong right now, because you've got the North Node in the 8th house, you've got Saturn just finishing up there, Neptune has just finished up there in that deeper aspect of your psychology and that more mystery school area of life, occult, astrology as well. And then Jupiter in your 12th right now. And soon you'll have Jupiter in your 1st house. So this is an opportunity to prepare for all of those bigger personal changes that are coming. The South Node will come through your 1st house. So there's an aspect of yourself that you're going to be shedding that will change the way you relate to others. So this is like a heads up. This is kind of a foreshadowing of the nodal axis. So we're getting a lot of information through here. That's maybe as much as I can tell you right now. Otherwise, we'll just keep going and going. And I want to get to my Virgos here, and I will definitely see you in the, I hope that was more than 2 minutes, and I will see you in the next video. Leo, do listen to the introduction. Bye for now. And Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, this is all happening in your 12th house. It's a very personal, intimate aspect of your chart that can be with reference to your unconscious mind or things that are going on behind the scenes that you become aware of. That can include, relationships. It doesn't mean everything's happening sort of in the ethers. It can actually be physical relationships and an awareness of the relationship that you're having and its impact on you, for example. Or a revelation around relationship, around intimacy. This is bed pleasures. It's also sleeping, 12th house. It's everything to do with the bed. Whatever happens when your eyes are closed is the 12th house. It's things that are, they're not, you can't see them with your eyes open. I mean, I just told you you could, but only if you're in bed. Or let's say if you're doing research, or if you're doing something a little bit away from the mainstream, or just away from visibility. It's whatever you're realizing that is a little bit on the margins of things. But also, if we come back to that more spiritual aspect of the 12th, like you close your eyes, you sense what is real for you, you sense what is true. And sometimes that is more real than anything else. A lot of your energy is currently at work, in the area of work, and your ruler is there at this point. Shortly, your ruler will be going into the 7th house and then retrograding in the 7th house, where Pisces is, about partnerships and so on. And so I think what's coming here with this invitation to reflect on what is really happening behind the scenes, or what maybe what your emotions are telling you, or what your mind is trying to get you to see, is potentially where you might be finding yourself needing to slow down or do something different that will contribute to a better everyday experience, or will contribute to a better work experience. If you've perhaps received a job offer, Mercury rules your house itself, but also rules your 10th house and is in the 6th house. Did you receive a new contract offer, or a job offer, or are looking for more work? Well, this opportunity of sitting with yourself quietly and saying, like, do I feel good about this? Is this a company I would want to work for? Or is there something in me that I recognize I could actually work by myself, for myself, in a way that actually suits me better than working for someone else, for example? If it's about let's call it a responsibility, or even in an extreme, a challenge or a burden, or something that you need to grapple with in a relationship, this will show up through quiet contemplation or through quiet, discreet conversation. So it'll be an opportunity for you to, again, rectify whatever's going on there and see, is this load too much for me to bear? Or is it something I see that is temporary? Is it fair for me in terms of my commitment to my own overall health as well? Because the 6th house and 12th house axis will show you also where your work is impinging on your health, where your mental health is affected by what you do every day, how you take care of yourself, your diet, your whatever other ways that you conduct yourself throughout the day, your schedule, sleep schedule. Are you sleeping? Are you getting good sleep? Are you going to bed early? These are basic, seemingly, fundamental questions, but they actually underpin the rest of life. Sometimes I just have the worst sleep and I can't function during the day. It's just like, what the heck is my name? And, so these sound like really basic things, but actually they are the most essential things. And certainly whatever is going on here is going to have lasting impact, because we're talking about a multitude of these conjunctions that have been happening, and also the fact that this is where the North Node will move into your everyday life is going to change. So you can prepare for that now by becoming deeply aware. The South Node going into your 12th house is a very spiritual place for the South Node. It's a very spiritual point in the chart, and in the 12th house brings a lot of awareness spiritually. So this could be where you're kind of turning the corner on something and saying, gosh, I realize that what I've been doing has not nourished my soul at all, and now I need to nourish my soul and go in that direction. All right, I think that's it for Virgo. I will see you in the next video. Good luck with that. You know what I'll do for Libra? We're going to come back to the actual chart and just take the original because then we have exactly the right degree. There we go, because I had to fiddle with the chart to get Aries in there. All right, so Libra, this is all happening in your 11th house of your future, and it's very much focused on what's coming around the future in terms of how you feel about maybe your role in it or the way that you share your emotional or relational dynamics with other people. There's something here that's the connection between what you create through yourself. Your ruler is in the fifth house. Venus is in the fifth house. Almost, no, she's just conjoined, no, will she? Yeah, she has just conjoined Mercury. And so that's a really lovely social indicator, and that's also a preparation for here where we've come to with this full moon, and the fact that as we look from the fifth house to the 11th house, it's like, well, how am I creating or putting out something that is intimate to me, that it makes me happy? It's an expression of myself, and how am I seeing that out in the world or in the future or the way that I relate to people in a general sense. This fifth house can also be with relation to romance and relationships that are romantic or love relationships. And that can include children. Everything you create. It can be your artistic creation. And of course, children are a creation as well. And also we find business. So entrepreneurship is about being creative. You literally create a business out of who you are and what you feel is significant. And you might be finding any of those points really calling to you at this point, and your focus should be on gains from what you what you receive from what you do, because the moon is for you really lining up with money. It rules the 10th house of your social status, your career, and what you do out in the world. And the 11th house is the second from the 10th, and it's what you gain from doing that. Now, it can also be not financial. You can gain reputationally from the thing that you do. Let's imagine you're retired or you're lucky enough to be financially independent, and you don't have to worry about the actual sort of showing up. It might be a vocational thing, might be it might be volunteer for that matter, but it's your reputational, receiving something reputational or financial from the thing that you do. You're acknowledged in this sense. There's an acknowledgement, and that acknowledgement will be based on what you've already been dealing with, or what you've already been creating, what you've already done. This can have something to do with your own child if you have children, how they're showing up in the world, and you're seeing them out on the stage, or your child is now, flying the nest, and you're seeing them with this sense of a different future, and that's part of your vision for your future. Now, your 10th house parenting role is affected by that because of the moon representing the 10th house for you, and now you're seeing yourself as a parent very differently. And of course, Venus rules your 8th house as well as your first house. So she's ruling your marriage house, your house of intimacy, your house of what is psychological, or what you could describe as, hidden, unconscious processes. And that might be something to explore as well, because this is also where, when your ruler is there ruling this Uranus, which is poised to station direct from the 3rd to the 4th of February. This is a big change for you in your intimacy. This can also be with reference to the occult or mystery aspects of life, like the deeper meanings of life, and how we find that, through meditation, through astrology, through tarot, or through other means, or through sex for that matter, because the 5th house, 8th house connection, Venus in the 5th, ruling the 8th, is also about that. It's about finding your way through who am I through deep intimacy with someone. And that can be emotional intimacy, it can be psychological intimacy, as well as physical intimacy. Your exaltation ruler Saturn is about to leave your 6th house, and that has been where you've really had to figure out how you're doing on your health, how you're doing on your everyday life, how you show up every day, what you might call a job or your day-to-day obligations and responsibilities, and then it moves into your house of relationship. So there's a lot here that also suggests that there's something changing in relationship. And Saturn going into your seventh doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing for a relationship. It can be something that stabilizes relationship, especially because Saturn for you is actually really constructive. It's exalted in your sign. So but it's not happy in your seventh house. So there might be something that you need to deal with that already you got a glimpse of the middle of last year, 2025. So prepare for this based on a vision for your future so that you can better prepare for what Saturn is going to bring when it comes in to your seventh house and joins up with Neptune again. And I'll be talking about these things again because this story is dragging out over a long period of time, and it's a big deal. So we will definitely revise and come back and see what's happening with you, Libra. Okay, see you in the next video. So Scorpio, this is happening in your 10th house of your area of your ambitions, your life goals, or your sense of what it is that you want to do out in the world, your career, your vocation. Your personal ambitions can be also with reference to relational ambitions. It's your social status. So like your ambition is to get married or to become the president of something or whatever. It's whatever that is for you. It doesn't mean that you have to be gainfully employed for the 10th house to make sense. And of course, your ruler, Mars, is in the 4th house. And if we look at the modern ruler for you, it's with Pluto, and it just conjoined Pluto on the 27th to the 28th. And here what we're finding is this lunation is calling you between that space of what is home, what brings me security. This can be quite literal. Where do I live? What is my relationship to the bricks and mortar home that I have or that I don't have potentially, or property and issues around that. It can be around land. It can be around homeland. It can be around the sense of whatever you feel is firing you up in terms of your psychological foundation, your emotional foundation. It's pretty busy down there, Scorpio, and that can be also with reference to your lineage, the family that you've established, but also who you've come through, and that also will impact. You'll see something about your social status or something that's happening in terms of your career that you want to contemplate. Am I feeling good about this career decision? Am I feeling good about this marital decision? Am I feeling good about the way that I show up in the world? Am I ready for the new way of showing up in the world? Because also your 6th house is strongly impacted by the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and the literal job that you do or the way you live your day-to-day life is going to be deeply impacted. And that's Mars also rules the 6th house just as it rules your house of self. So this could be also something that you could reflect on. It's like, is this the time to retire? Is this the time to change jobs? Is this the time to start a new company? Often with Saturn in the 5th house, people will find the courage and the nous and the capacity to start their own business, to start their own, like they turn something that they enjoy, something that they're good at and skillful at, and they make money from it. And especially as Jupiter is in the 9th house and it's still there till the end of June, you've been thinking about your sense of your what is my purpose. And if that's the case, this would be where Saturn says, okay, we figured this out. We got to the point where we figured out how to structure all this. And then the hard work starts then with Saturn going in the 6th house, putting the structure to your everyday life in a new way. And you would have had a glimpse of that in the middle of 2025. So this is not entirely new, but of course we're in a new realm in so many ways. So reflect on this sense of what is my role in society? What is my role in the family? What do I feel personally driven by? What are my ambitions? And that will give you the answer to this moment in time. And then do look at other videos that I've done about the Aquarius stellium and listen to the introduction to hear more about that. Or get the annual reading, because it's got all this information coming the whole year. It's laid out for you in about 2.5 hours. That gives you a lot of inklings of what's coming down the pipeline. All right. See you in the next video, Scorpio. Bye for now. Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, this is all happening in your ninth house of your purpose. It's a trinal house, of another fire house, so it really favors you when things are happening in an axis that is more constructive or supportive of you. So you're getting a lot of a sense, or at least you could sit with yourself to get a lot of sense around your longer vision for why you're here. What is my life all about? Um, and I think Jupiter, your ruler in the eighth house, is helping you with that, because it's probably putting a lot of awareness on things that are non-necessarily material, more mystical or more driven by psychology, or by what is kind of more of an emotional, mental, psychological reference, not necessarily materially, although the eighth house can also be what you receive through marriage or what you receive through clients, money that you share with other people. But if we look at that from an esoteric place, probably that will inform you better in terms of this moon in the ninth, where it's much more related to your sense of what I believe in, what I have faith in. That has been tested for sure. I know a fair few Sagittarians who have gone through quite a lot of testing, personal testing, and this is something that you can really play with, because you're going to have Jupiter in that house, in that ninth house, and that will bring you a lot of support, a lot of favor, even though Jupiter is, in its exaltation in Cancer, it is in the eighth house, and so that's not necessarily showing up and bringing you things that feel like you're ready to deal with them, let's say, unless you're working, quite literally in astrology or this related field, or if you're working in psychology and this kind of thing, that really will support you. Or through marriage potentially as well. But in terms of you growing into yourself, I think you want to think much more on a metaphysical level of how you're going to be expanding into something new, because it's a big deal. What's going on in your third house is changing your everyday reference points. The third house is your local space. It's your siblings, your cousins, your extended family. It's your neighbors. It's your local coffee shop. It's your bus commute. All these different things, or your Ferrari commute, whatever it is for you. And there's a lot going on there that is new. It's all very, very new. And one of the things I've said in previous videos is that you might be feeling you're setting yourself up for either learning or teaching in a different way. And you are a natural teacher. This is part of your kind of built-in structure. And soon you're going to have Saturn in the fifth house of students with Neptune, and that's an energy of bringing knowledge through and teaching and the studying aspect. That's the fifth house, and that's also trinal to you. And you're going to have the North Node moving into your third house, and I'll talk about that more when we talk about the eclipse that's coming up 2 weeks from now. That the eclipse is part of the mini lunar cycle, so that's the new moon that is following this full moon. That is also here in the third house, but now we've got the opposition from the ninth house asking you to look at a higher purpose to what you do, or a higher maybe structure in terms of rather than the more pragmatic stuff, like how can I elevate that and how can I see it with a higher vision. And this might have to do with your faith in a very spiritual or religious sense as well. Mars is ruling your 12th house, and it also rules that fifth house of your expression. So that can also be a part of that as well, a new way of expressing your faith or your political beliefs as well, which is this kind of a faith. All right, I'm going to have to leave it there. I think it's going to be a really interesting time to sit with yourself and really question the, like, literally the meaning of life. Why am I alive? Why am I here? And find that answer as it builds over the next few months. And then Jupiter comes in that ninth house and it really expands that feeling of, oh, this is why I'm here. And start with that right now. Good luck with that, Sagittarius. I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, this is happening in your 8th house of intimacy and other people's money, what you inherit, what you share in a deep, intimate way in terms of your psychological self or your emotional self, where you feel trusting. Of course, the occult as well. Astrology is there. Your sense of your mystical connection to life, the mystery school stuff, and the occult, different occult practices. The 8th house is a very psychological house as well. It's the unconscious. No, it's the subconscious. That's a better word. It's a subconscious house, things that you are not always really sure about, or not really clear about until you look at them. And that would be also something to do at this time. Really look at yourself through your emotional lens. How do I feel? Like, how do I feel about my marriage? How do I feel about myself psychologically? Am I doing okay? One of the things about Capricorn is that very seldom do you want to touch on the deeper sense of self, or the deeper emotional bonding, or the deeper connections that you have. And maybe you're feeling a little fragile right now. Your ruler is about to move into your 4th. So that will become a question and a focus of attention for the next couple of years. And then Neptune is there now. So I think that pattern might be changing for you. This kind of Mars-like separation and distance from emotions, and feeling a little bit cut off from the deeper connection to life itself. This is a good time to really kind of sit with yourself. And Mars, your exaltation ruler, is in your 2nd house, which is part of this story, obviously, because the lunation is the opposition between the sun and the moon from your 2nd to your 8th. And that would be where you really start to look at money issues, or your self-worth, your value. If you're changing, if there's something changing, Venus rules your career house as well, your social status house. And you've got Uranus just about to move into your 6th house for the next 7 years, where it was the middle of last year. If you're changing job, or if you're retiring, or if you're changing in some way, the work that you do, or what is available to you in terms of income, or how you spend your money, or whatever, this is a good opportunity for you to take action based on what you realize you need, in terms of how are you the main support? Often Capricorn is the main support for other people, because Saturn rules the 2nd house. So Capricorn often is the one that supports other people. Not always, it depends on your natal chart, but it's kind of the way of looking at that as an archetype. And certainly this is showing up that there's a lot that you're looking at and that needs to be questioned or renewed, or new ways of doing that. New sources of income can be there as well. And this with the moon in your 8th house can be an opportunity to see, how is that impacting my marriage? How is that impacting my investments? This is also other people's money in the shape of how I invest for others as well. And also, what can I receive from others? Quite literally here, because the moon rules your 7th house. And that can be through inheritance, for example, or through clients, or through money that comes from another source, insurance payouts, or whatever. It can be about taxes as well. All of those potentials, there's so many potential things that can come through this. It's a mysterious part of the chart, and that could be something to reflect on as well, where the moon is showing you, what is my relationship to things that are non-material? Like, what is my relationship to my psyche? What is the relationship I have to my spiritual self, to my like, what do I believe is true and real, aside from the three-dimensional aspects of life? And this could be an opportunity for you to really reflect on that. And yeah, I think that's it, Capricorn. There's a lot, and we will be covering these things again and again as we go forward. Certainly, a lot of your time and effort will be here in the second house, but you want to deliberately see how that's reflecting something that needs to be looked at in the eighth house. The eighth house is also, it can be seen as fear, what you're afraid of, or family taboos and things that are maybe family psychological issues that can be like dealing with things that come through the family patterns that you've inherited. You know, am I a person who's very angry, and can I deal with that? You know, finding these different symbols in different ways, or what, you know, whatever, of course, is relevant for you. But think deeper than on the surface of things right now. Listen to the beginning of this video to get more about that, because I think we're in times where we really need to think deeply before we make decisions, before we move forward with the big decisions that are on the horizon. All right, Capricorn, I will see you in the next video. Lots and lots and lots more to say about all of these things. Make the most of this. And so Aquarius, of course, this is happening in your house of the other. It's the partner, it's the business partner. It's how do I see myself through relationships, or how do I become aware of what I need in relationships because of relationships, and you're going to see that reflected back from another. So the person across the table from you is a great resource in understanding yourself. And that's going to be, doesn't have to be a Leo. It's just the point of the person, the individual. How are you in your expression of self? How do you feel when you are, you know, at your best? How do you feel when you're at your worst? How do you feel when you don't feel you belong? How are you feeling yourself aligning with the people around you? So if you listen to the introduction, you'll get a lot out of that as well. That's part of the big story of the video, finding yourself in alignment or not with the people around you, including your siblings, including your friends, including your social groups, let's say, or extended family, your own value, because your ruler Saturn is in your second house, and this is part of the tension that is there during this lunation. Understanding your own value, what you have at your disposal, what resources do you have. This is a big part of this year-and-a-half transit of the North Node as well as the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years of Saturn being in your second house, which is soon to end. This will be the last lunation with your ruler in the second. From now on, Saturn, your ruler, is going to be in the third house. And then if you take your modern ruler to be Uranus, I don't, but many people do. And so if you're looking from Uranus's perspective, you have 3 more months of Uranus in your fourth, and then it's going in your fifth house. So again, that will change your perspective on yourself a little bit. That instability that will have been there for you over the last 7 years, that may have been only sensed by yourself. It may have been more of a psychological or emotional instability, not necessarily directly instability due to where you live, for example, but that's shifting, that's moving on. And so here you can look in terms of any of those things, and like, who is in my life as we go through these things? Who's there with me as I go through these changes? Do I want that person with me? Is that the best person to have in my life, for example? Mercury rules your fifth house, and it's in your first house, and it rules your eighth house of marriage. So there might be something here to do with a lover or a marriage partner or a love relation, a romantic love relationship, and you're having to really talk about it, really reflect on it, because Mercury and Venus just aligned in your first house along with everybody else, and you had Pluto and Mars aligning in your first house as well, and that Mars rules your third house as well as your 10th house. So there may be something about your marital status or your social status or your career status that is really focusing your attention, and now you want to look at how's that being reflected back to me through through others in a general sense. All right, I would need to see your natal chart to be more firm about those things, because there's so many potentials. When things are happening in the first house, seventh house axis, it really does impact almost all of your life. Especially when the rulers of the 10th and the 4th, the other axis of your chart, are also involved in the first house of self. So I would say this is going to be a really extraordinary lunation for you. So use this as a time to really sit with yourself, contemplate things, resolve things with people if there's anything that needs, resolving in some way, as a way of also gracefully preparing for the eclipse that's coming up in your first house of self, which is squaring this Uranus in your fourth, right? And of which I will say a lot more as we go forward. Okay, good luck with that, Aquarius. I will see you in the next video. So Pisces, this is happening in your sixth house of work, your health area, or your everyday sort of schedule, what you do every day. It's your place of what you have to deal with, the stuff that you have to do, the obligations and the schlepping and all the things that we have to do to organize ourselves, to get things sorted, to, the emails that have to be sent and the diapers that have to be changed and the dinners that have to be made and all of these different things. And it's whatever is in your experience that prepares you or that is contributing to relationship with others as well, and that is coming through your way of relating, through your self-expression or your heart's desire, where we find your ruler, Jupiter. So there's something that you already have an inkling of, and you're just having to suss out rather what it is that you want to see or do in your everyday life that will help you find this. Maybe it is about a relationship, like how do I achieve the relationship? And that may be a lover relationship, it may be a business partnership, it may be a client relationship. Certainly there's a huge tension here that also is about the inner tug of psychological health or spiritual health, as well as your physical health. Are you overworking? Are you doing too much? Are you focusing enough on the hidden aspects of your life? Are you doing things that are not good for you? Are there so many things that you realize, no, I have to stop this and I have to start this to go in this new direction? That I'm becoming aware now that this is having an impact on my mind. The moon represents the mind as well as the body, the mind-body complex and the overall health. And the sun represents your constitution. So both of them play together and represent health, and especially in the 6th house, 12th house axis. And this might be about foreign lands. It might be about something of people abroad, places that are far away, or clients that are far away, foreign clients. Mars rules your 9th as well, and it's in the 12th, and it rules your 2nd house of money. So this might be about something that you're reorganizing around money, income, clients, fees, or money that you receive from business partners or clients at a distance, long way away. Or it could be about working online. That's also the 12th house. You have Uranus in the 3rd, ruled by this Venus in the 12th, and Saturn in the 1st, which is finalizing its long, very painful, slow journey through Pisces at this moment. And it is ruling that 12th house as well as the 11th house of gains and your future and so on. So you've been asked to look at all of that. And if you've been following me, you will have seen that manifesting over the last couple of years. And so here we have this very sort of last minute opportunity to get really clear. What is the life I want to live? What is the day-to-day looking like? What is my health? Am I prioritizing that? Have I found the correct boundaries? Have I found the correct relational boundaries, or the boundaries that I need simply to function well, to see myself in public or in the vision that I have for society and my role in it? That's the Saturn in your 1st house. In my future overall, have I created something lasting, long-term, reliable that I can lean on for this next phase? which is going to be, again, a big sort of step into the unknown, and there's a lot of change. So all the more reason to be clear. Do I at least internally feel that what I've built, or how I feel about my day and my day to day, is sustainable? Venus is your exaltation ruler, and she's in the 12th. And again, there might be something there, especially as she's conjoining with Mercury. She's still in a tight conjunction with Mercury, and they met just before this lunation. I think there might be something here about, or is it, are they coming up to meet now? I'm not so sure. I'm confused, but I'm too tired to check, to be honest. Anyway, they're in the process of meeting. They're in their conjunction, and then both of them go into your first house of self, and that will be when we get to the eclipse that's happening on the 17th, of which I'll do a video and a lot more talking. Venus will be on the North Node in your first house, and she is your exaltation ruler. So what you're understanding here, from either a great distance or from your inner intuition, from your spiritual guides, from your ancestors, from whatever this is, you are going to be able to see something manifesting through that. And Mercury rules your relational sector. So again, if this is about a business partner or a life partner, a love relationship, whatever it is, be really clear. If you do visualizations, for example, be really clear, be specific, or be in a place of I see and feel my way towards what is best for me. Jupiter is in the 5th for another 6 months from here, or a little bit, no, I guess 5 months after this point, till the end of June. And so that also increases the opportunities for new fruitful relationships of all kinds, but especially with reference to entrepreneurship, children, lovers, creative expression, creative projects, teaching projects. All of those potentials are there. And so sort yourself out for the everyday, for your health, for your how do I do my everyday life? How do I overcome obstacles? How can I overcome the pattern, potentially, of the dynamic of martyring, being there for everybody else, anything like that, which would feel, again, draining or debilitating, depending. All right, so there we are, Pisces. All the best to you. As a Pisces stellium, I'm feeling you. And I will come back and I will talk to you more about what is coming up in the weeks ahead. So make the most of that, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.